I want to go through the my personal chronological um, order of unlawful evictions and what's wrong with the system today. The courts and the um, laws are set in place that protect the landlords first and foremost. So back in 2015, I moved on to 10 acres in Lake County, Florida, Mount Dora, Florida. And right away, the first month, the landlord's like, man, you can fix anything. Um, and he reduced my rent a month, $100 the very first month that I moved in. And eventually we started talking about a land contract. And part of this is my fault. Well, this part of this is my fault. I never got. Every time I tried to get him to sign a land contract, um, he would put it off. He had some kind of excuse or this, that, the other. And there was a lot of things wrong with this property. And so I started um, doing this work. I paid my rent every month. And I started doing all this work and giving him bills for the work that I did. You know, he approved the work and the amount and everything, and but he never paid me for any of the jobs. It was going towards this land contract, you know, and by 2017, I had done about $8,000 worth of work to this property and paid my rent every month. And finally, the I'm like, listen, you need to sign this land contract or whatever. And he refused, and I stopped paying the rent to him. I started paying it into escrow at the Lake County Courthouse, and they sent me and the landlord to mediation, and mediation failed, and it was set to go to court. So I'm waiting for a certified letter from the clerk of court, to come appear at this hearing, and instead at 7 a.m. in the morning, I got the sheriff knocking at my door telling me to get out. I got 24 hours to get out. If I'm still on the property when he comes back in 24 hours, he's going to put me in jail. So I became homeless for the very first time and got my very first eviction for the very first time at 55 years old. I'm a disabled veteran, and if it weren't for a couple of friends, I would have lost a lot of stuff during that period. And I ended up losing a lot of stuff because I ended up being homeless for almost a year. Me and my dog lived in a motorcycle trailer for a year. They gave that landlord the $1,750 that was in escrow and threw me on the streets penniless. And I, after the court case was over, I was able to go in and talk to the magistrate about this because, she was no longer presiding over the case. And I said, what the heck is this? She said, well, we've been telling State Representative Jennifer Sullivan and then Congressman Ron DeSantis that they need to fix this problem. And she called and put me on the phone with Ron DeSantis. And I spoke to Ron, and I'm like, look, man, what the hell is this? The landlord gets to send out the notice to appear in court, and all they got to do is go to the court and say, well, I don't know why he's not here. I gave him a notice. And Ron DeSantis says, well, I'm running for governor right now. As soon as I get into office, I'm going to fix that. Well, that was just another empty promise, broken promise, out of sight, out of mind, because it's still that way today. I go back every once in a while and look at it. He never changed that. He doesn't care about families and children or veterans or anything like that, other than 4 times every 4 years. So, anyways, that was my first eviction. Now, Ron DeSantis' office did get me help stop this unlawful garnishment that was happening. All of a sudden I had a 31-year-old student debt garnishment, federal student loan debt garnishment of my disability, and he got it stopped. So I left Florida on the day of Hurricane Michael, and I came to Ohio. What an adventure that was, fighting that hurricane all the way home. But I came back to Ohio, and my very first landlord, the place was a wreck. It had mouse infested. It had raccoons in the ceiling, and I left there and went to Xenia and moved into a house rented by I think it was Czechoslovakia or some kind of European descent, and he failed to disclose that the toilet had been leaking in the crawl space under the house. That's why the former tenants moved out, and I didn't find that out until I contacted them, and I was in, this guy was trying to evict me out of the house, and the Xenia code enforcement got tired of messing with the guy and just came over and condemned the house. They had originally given me 7 days to get out, and ended up telling me just take my time. They knew it wasn't my fault, So I go to the HUD office in Xenia, and when I walk in, I see a poster up on the wall, HUD VASH, Veterans Homelessness Prevention and Homelessness Help. And so I took the number down, went home and called the Dayton VA Hospital HUD VASH program and did an interview, and they approved me for the HUD VASH voucher, but they wanted me to put all my belongings into storage, which I would have had to pay for, and put my dog in shelter, which I would have had to pay for, and then move into a cot in transitional housing here in Dayton, Ohio. And transitional housing is full of prostitution, drug dealers, theft and crime, and even St. Vincent de Paul shelter has had children murdered inside the shelter. So, but I'm like, I didn't have time to argue with these guys. So I had, 12 days to get out of Xenia. So the St. Vincent de Paul Veteran of Family First people took me over and introduced me to a landlord, well, a representative of the landlord, which was Midwest Property Acquisition and Property Management, LLC. And when we looked at the place was a mess. There were a lot of unfinished projects inside the apartment, and the representative of this property management company said, well, don't worry about it. All the projects will be finished, and the place will be cleaned up by the time you move in 2 weeks. Well, when I showed up with a truckload and trailer load of my belongings, the place hadn't been done. Nothing had been touched. So I had to clean the place up best as I could before I could even move in. and I got on the maintenance portal to Midwest and complained about the basement steps being loose and there's no handrail. And then as I was walking down the steps to get the clothes out of the dryer to go out to Xenia, because I sued the landlord out there, a counterclaim, which I ended up winning. But when I was going down the basement steps to get my clothes out of the dryer, the basement steps collapsed, and I fell and broke my arm. And I notified, when I called, Bradley Millward, the CEO of Midwest Acquisition and Property Management, answers the phone. And I said, hey, I just want to let you know that one of the maintenance requests that I made on the maintenance portal just caused me to fall and break my arm going down the basement steps. And he's like, so what are you doing going down the basement steps? And I'm like, that question made no sense to me. I'm like, I'm going down to get clothes out of my washer and dryer. And the guy says, I still don't understand what you're doing going into the basement. I said, well, then you're not even intelligent enough to be in this conversation, and hung up on him. And immediately, I started going through, I went through about a year's worth of retaliatory action with them coming to the door, using fear and intimidation. They showed up at my door one day with 6 guys and a girl, and one of the guys was an armed security guard and big thugs, tried to force their way in my apartment 3 days after I broke my arm. But anyways, it went on for about a year. I let everybody in the county commission, at the county administration, the Ohio State Attorney General, everybody know what these people were doing. And nobody did anything. And I found out through code enforcement, through Dayton code enforcement, that there were 16 code enforcement violations present and undisclosed the day I signed the lease to move into this place. So, anyways, after all kinds, different reasons, just like exactly what I'm going through right now, the property management company had 3-day notice for this, 3-day notice to leave, 3-day notice to leave, and finally, at Christmas time, all of this stuff happens at Christmas time. I'm not sure of the relevance of that, but like I said, my first eviction was at Christmas, right at Christmas, and then here it is 1 year later. At Christmas time, the Midwest Acquisition held on to my rent check. This is one of the reasons why I will not pay money into escrow. Both of these incidents and the next eviction that I went through is why I do not pay. I will not. They gave the first landlord my escrow money, and put me on the streets penniless. And then this one, the landlord held on to the rent check, filed for non-payment of rent, and then after I'd been served for the non-payment of rent, returned my rent check. And the courts and nobody did anything to help. Legal aid wouldn't step in. None of the law, legal entities that could have prevented that stepped in and did anything. So, because of that homelessness, the Dhhs, the St. Vincent de Paul Veterans and Family First program put me in a hotel. They put me in the Home 2 Suites of Hilton on Miller Lane for 100 and some days. And, donations and taxpayers had to pay for that. And then in the meantime, I was able to get a HUD-VASH and Greater Dayton Premier Management public housing contract and move into a home out, an apartment out in Drexel. So the landlord out there, you know, I got every place I move into, I don't, you know, I fix it up because I wanted to be home. I wanted to, you know, I wanted to look nice. So landlords don't have a problem when you're doing that and they're getting something for free. But when the public housing authority came out and did their inspection of the property, the place failed because of a severe mouse infestation. And the landlord, you know, they have a grace period for the landlord to repair. And they came out and they treated one apartment and they didn't treat the other, which did nothing for the mice. And they failed their inspection again, and the Public Housing Authority, under 24 CFR 983.353, abated their portion of the payment. Okay, and when they do that, that very law says that it's unlawful for the landlord to request 1 penny more than the Public Housing Authority approved amount for the tenant to pay. I kept my rent paid. And when I went to court out in the Western Montgomery County Municipal Court, Judge Dhhs, I mean, I kept shooting this down. I kept shooting that down. We had like 4 hearings. And finally the magistrate said, listen, Mr. Faulkner, this isn't going to go this way next time, I promise you. So when I go out there the next time, I had served them notarized abatement of eviction. You know, they had the wrong, they spelled the name of the road wrong, which is against the law. You have to have if you're going to get a warrant, you know, a summons is a criminal summons for a civil matter. Okay, so they had, it was Hannah Avenue, 46 Hannah Avenue in Drexel, Ohio, and they had Hannah spelled Hana, which is a technical issue that is liable to throw it out. And you know, twice we'd gone in there and they had to reschedule it for that reason. And then when I went back the final time and Judge Dhhs was overseeing it, because I'd served him, because he is the presiding judge for that jurisdiction, they still hadn't corrected the summons. They hadn't corrected any of that stuff. And I made them aware that this was in violation of federal regulation. I notified the clerk of court, the housing, public housing, and the HUD-VASH team that this was an unlawful eviction, and legal aid refused to help. And I went to court and got evicted again. And that Judge Dhhs let the landlord, Clayton Sears, he tried to hand me the rent check in the courtroom during the proceeding, and I refused to pick it up. I left it there. So that's why I don't pay once somebody files for eviction, I will never ever pay into escrow or pay another cent. And all of this has ruined me so much financially. These institutions and this corrupt judiciary have ruined me to the point where now, you know, I will not hit the streets penniless again. I know better, you know. So I know that you know, the courts and they first thing they revert to, oh, well, you didn't pay your rent. And people that look at this from the outside, oh, well, you didn't pay your rent, you're a dirtbag, whatever. So I don't care what anybody thinks. I know the law and I know my rights and I know exactly what's going on here. And because of that, you know, The Midwest Acquisition did the same thing. They held their rent check, did my December rent check, and filed for non-payment of rent. And I was served with an eviction notice from the courts, who knew that my rent was paid. I'd given them I didn't have the canceled check because it hadn't hit the bank yet, but the time frame hadn't allowed for that. So they should have at least given me a continuance or something like that, in which I could have proved that they held the check, But they don't care. They don't care about the tenants. Listen, the system makes money off of homelessness. I've proven that time and time again. But I just thought I'd share this with everyone in case you think I'm just a squatter trying to squat and get something for free and all that stuff. There's a reason why I don't pay escrow, and I stop paying my rent once somebody starts doing dirty eviction nonsense because of experience, And let me tell you, after the first time, and being homeless for a year, because they took, that cost me a lot of money, not just the $1,750 in escrow, but it cost me at least double that, and I hit the streets penniless. It took me a year to get in a position to even leave Florida. So, and I'm not the only one that goes through this stuff. Listen, they still haven't changed the law in Florida about the landlords, or at least in Lake County, the landlords sending out the notice to appear at the hearing. How many families have been evicted? How many veterans have been evicted? How many handicapped, disabled people have been evicted because of that law? And like my hashtags say, war upon the people, veteran housing auditor, things like that. I'm out here trying to raise awareness, to all this unlawful activity that creates homeless statistics. And see, when and the government makes money off that because now you're on welfare and you're getting contributions, and they play both sides of every game, y'all. And most of you know this. Don't be afraid to say something about it. Don't be afraid to put your comments below this video. And please like, share, and subscribe to my channel whenever you see it anywhere. It's all across the internet. And, put your, there's no excuse for not putting your story down. You're not protecting your family. You are putting your family in danger by being quiet. Period. That's all I got for everyone today. It's Christmas Day. You see how I'm celebrating it.